Hello, this is Astromaxis. This is the first time I'm doing this sort of video, so if there's any problems and if there's any questions or queries or any advice to improve it, I would be really helpful. As this is the first time I'm making a voice recording video as this, I would also expect you to be a bit patient with me and, well, not to really criticize me too severely. Well, the first time I wanted to make a video and talking about it is because I decided I saw a lot of videos concerning Legend of Korra, which is the spin-off from the last Airbender Avatar, or Avatar the Legend of Aang, which is actually the name title that was produced in South Asia and I guess East Asia. I'm not sure about the East Asia part, but when it was premiered in South Asia, it was called Avatar the Legend of Aang. I wanted to just talk a bit about the series, and I saw many videos concerning the series, so I thought, why not I say something about it too. Well, basically, I think the series is really good. One of the best things about the series is that it was able to bring back the elements of the old series that we liked and incorporate new themes. Now, it is a good that, it's a good thing that basically the timeline of the series is not constructed in suspension, in the sense that, the Avatar timeline had a sort of a medieval setting to it, but we do see a sense of modernization in the Legend of Korra series. And that's not only reflected in the gadgets and gizmos and the technological prowess, but it's also shown in the architecture of the buildings. Now, I'll go back in describing the architecture of the buildings, but I thought I should definitely talk on that a bit more, because that's one of the things that I really liked about The Legend of Korra, so I'll talk about that a bit later again. The initial preview, of course, you get to see of Korra. It's nice to see a new avatar in the show. It's nice to see the avatar slightly older than Aang. When Aang started out his journey as Avatar, he was 12 years old. Though we know in the original storyline that Aang had been in suspended animation with the Avatar state in 100 years, it's nice to know that this Avatar is slightly older. A lot of people consider Aang to be very old as well, but you forget that he's in scientific terms, or scientific fiction terms, he's actually in hypersleep, so it's quite obvious that he won't be as old as you expect him to be. That's why when he met his friend Boomy after so many years, Boomy has aged, but Aang has not, so... but that's going back to the old series, but it's good to see a slightly older Avatar. Sorry about the creaky noises, that's my computer chair. Okay, let's get back to that. It's nice to see that the new Avatar is also a girl. I always wanted to know what a girl Avatar would be like. We already got glimpses of Avatar Kyoshi, who was from the Earth Kingdom, but it's nice to see an Avatar also from the Water Tribe. Southern Water Tribe, very good. We've already noticed that there is a bit of a problem concerning the Northern Water Tribe, but I'll also get back to that later on. So it's nice to see that this time the Avatar is from the Water Tribe, and it's nice to see that the Avatar is also in the beginning isolated a lot from society. Now, this is, I think, a bit in conjunction with the whole series, because Aang was also part of the air nomads. So there was this thing that Aang was not really in a metropolitan or sort of a bustling city sort of area. So basically most of both Aang and Korra share the similarity, but they also share the difference in the sense that Aang was not really supported by a lot of people when he was an Avatar, in the sense that one of his teachers really wanted Aang to grow up as a normal boy, but other people wanted Aang to take his Avatar lessons seriously because of the problem concerning the Fire Nation and its colonization and everything like that. Um, but it's nice to see that Korra has a different upbringing. Ever since she was a young girl, she has had all the support of both the White Lotus and her other teachers to become a better avatar. Now, this is obviously a bigger advantage comparatively to Aang, and also one of my friends noted something very well, which I forgot about the old series, is that Aang was only able to airbend when he got to find out he was an avatar. But we see that Korra from a young age, pretty much in a violent but in almost a quirky way, was able to do most of all the bending. If you saw the first episode, you would actually see that. So, in this sense, there's a difference between Aang and Korra. Korra is very energetic in the sense that she's very aggressive, she's very assertive, and she pretty much doesn't like to take things smoothly. Aang is more boyish in nature and more of a young lad in terms of behavior than Korra. Korra is obviously more, like, she has a lot of energy, and she also has a lot of oomph, as you would like to call it. And Aang is more quiet and calm. This is also something me and my friend noticed, that Aang may be very energetic, but his energy and Korra's energy is way different. Korra is more like, okay, I'm gonna do this right now. And Aang is more like, I would like to do this right now, so shall I do it or not? So there is this bit of wisdom in Aang that he likes to think things through, but it's also probably because of the sort of upbringing they both had. Seeing the fact that air nomads are pretty much more calm in nature. If you notice Tenzin and even his children, like his youngest boy, may be energetic, but they all have meditation and things like that. So they're pretty much monk sort of characters, but Korra isn't from a monk sort of culture, so obviously she would not have those characteristics. So, going back, I also like the plot line of this series very much. It's nice to know that they didn't recycle elements, in the sense that they didn't just put up props that they had in the first series, and just slap on the Avatar label and go like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. It's nice to know that Korra's journey is different than Aang's. And the best part is, I think, that whereas Aang started out knowing only airbending and gradually went to learn the other bending, it's nice to know that Korra can do all the other bending but never been able to airbend. So that's a very good take on the series, that because as Tenzin says, that the element which is most in contradiction, or not contradiction exactly, like contrast with the recent avatars or the current avatars state of mind, is hard to master. And he does say that earthbending was hard to master for Aang, which is obviously quite understandable, because Aang is very hyperactive in a young boy sort of way, but Korra is not hyperactive per se. She does have things that she's not rooted in the ground. So she's rooted, she's balanced, but she's not really hyperactive. So obviously she won't have any trouble doing earthbending. But she lacks Aang's certain calmness in nature. As I said, she's very assertive. So obviously in some way she will have some problems doing airbending. Series initially looked really beautiful. I was very impressed with how they made Republic City. It was extremely nice, and I liked the way that they introduced the different gangs in Republic City, and Republic City's ecosystem, and like stuff like that. It's pretty good. What I mean by ecosystem, I mean that in the very first episode, one of the funny parts is that everybody seems semi-prosperous in Republic City, but there are still homeless people living in one of the central parks of the city. So they actually got that pretty down. And then in one of the other episodes, they also show that there are street children and there are street performers, and so it's pretty much in line with what a city would be like. They're not really creating a utopia, which I actually appreciated, because though Aang brought balance and all those sort of elements together and helped build Republic City, it's obvious that there's still that problem, normal city problems within the city limits. One of the things that Republic City does stand out a lot with the last series actually, is that Republic City has a lot of different sorts of benders and bending culture all mixed together. Before, we did see that before in some of the Earth Kingdom places, but as the Fire Nation was the main, like, antagonist in the first series, we did notice that the Fire Nation was colonizing the other states, so it was their culture which was a bit predominant in other places. You wouldn't go to Earth Kingdom and see many places with Water Tribe relics and stuff like that. So there's obviously a reality check there. Like, you don't need a reality check there, but there is, because there's already there that in the city different cultures intermix and interweave. So they put it really well. And so yeah, initially Legend of Korra seems really fun. The first episode seems fun. It's nice to see that Korra's animal is a polar bear dog, and polar bear dog Naga is really cute and very helpful. That's also something, if you realize that Appa was very much in conjunction with Aang's character, and Naga is more in conjunction with Korra's character, seeing that Naga is very, very aggressive as well, is able to be loyal and is able to find out things and stuff, whereas Appa is very docile and very friendly. So basically both of them share qualities with the people that they're bonded with. So it's a good thing to use a polar bear dog as, we could say, Korra's animal companion rather than a flying bison, because that wouldn't, well, that not only would be a reputation, it would also not make sense, seeing the fact that flying bisons are more adapted to live with air nomads, whether they're able to live with water tribe people is not really there. So yeah, the architecture is good. The first episode was good. Now, my main complaint of Legend of Korra actually has to come with the fact that they got this big chunk of plot, which has a lot of potential, but they've decided to minimize the plot into, I don't know, 10 or 20 episodes? I mean, like, what I just found out is that book 1, Air, is only 10 episodes long. And I was like thinking, but you got this villain that's really, really serious stuff, and you want Korra and that villain to have a face-off so quickly. I mean, I can also understand to some extent that, you know, because it's a city, it's not traveling, they're not trying to hide or anything like that, it would make a bit less sense to have it like 20 episodes. But as Uber Hikari also pointed out, the rapidity of the series is also a bit unrealistic. It's not something that's good for a series which has decided to take such an important issue to talk about. And that's one of the things that I really thought was odd. Because you have, alright, the villain, I think, is a bit more sinister than Fire Lord Ozai. You know, because Fire Lord Ozai was a villain that you didn't really meet in the first book of the old series, if I can remember it correctly. But his influence was pretty much there because of Fire Nation, because of Zuko, and because of even if you didn't meet Azula until also the other seasons, you kind of did get the presence of both Fire Lord Ozai, Azula, and then you kind of did get a feel of them. But one of the main differences is that from the very first day, or the very first initial episodes, you get to meet Amon, the main antagonist of this Avatar series. Now, Amon has a pretty different agenda rather than Fire Lord Ozai. He also is bent on trying to rule civilized world, per se, in the sense of Republic City, but he wants non-benders to rule Republic City, whereas Fire Lord Ozai wanted, Fire Nation to be top-notch and stuff like that. You have Amon, who wants bending to be, as he puts it, cleansed, and wants people to just be non-benders. He wants equality, as he says. This is a very difficult issue to grasp. If you think about the first series and you think about this series has a more darker tone, as the creators actually did say that it would, because this is a very important issue in the world where Avatar is being premiered, that there are some people who can bend and there are some people who can't. We know from the very first series that there was Sokka who could bend, who couldn't bend, sorry about that, but his sister could bend. But still, Sokka was considered one of the main characters, and he was very important, and he was one of the people who helped Aang, but there was really no discrimination against him because he was not a bender. He was still one of the valuable aspects of the team, and also one of Sokka's love interests, who is Suki, one of the Kyoshi warriors of the Earth Kingdom. She also wasn't a bender, but she was considered one of the important people who helped. And if you remember Azula's entourage, it was filled with people who couldn't bend, but she considered them to be very valuable. So there wasn't really this discrimination against people who could bend and who couldn't bend. But now this discrimination in this city has started to come. And that's also very modern. If you've read history, if you follow industrial history, and if you follow any forms of literature or philosophy that concentrates on this, the city actually brings forth a lot of anomalies that you did not feel before. So that is a very city-struck problem. You have all these people, benders and non-benders, of different tribes living together. And soon a problem starts coming up that there are some people who seems to have less power than the other people because of the certain skill called bending. Now, I think that this is a very important issue because I don't like to think that Amon is a very antagonistic personality. Because to some extent, if you look at people like Tarlok, then you'd understand. Amon has been